You got a game and a controller. That's the way it goes. But sometimes that wasn't enough. Nintendo is always coming up with creative and unique ways to play games. Today, there's the Wii and the DS stylus pen. But even in the early days with the NES, they were doing the same sort of thing. Some of them were pretty awesome at the time, but others were failed experiments that made you look like a jack. So let's take a look at some of the NES accessories. Let's start with the Zapper. Back then we just called it the gun, because that's what it is. There's nothing more satisfying than just shooting the out of things. It was the quintessential gaming accessory. Almost every console had their own version of the gun. Only problem, it doesn't work so great anymore. Depends on the game, the kind of TV you're using, and the gun itself. I have 3 of them. The first one is completely random. Sometimes it makes its target, but most of the time it doesn't. The second one has a pattern. Every other round it like goes dead. So here comes the 2 clay pigeons, I shoot them, no problem. Then the next ones come out, I can't hit them, even if I press the thing against the screen. The third Zapper has the same problem, except that the pattern's swapped. What the f*** is going on? Even the alleged light bulb trick doesn't work. Here we have Wild Gunman. What do you gotta use your hands? That's like a baby's toy. The Super Nintendo also had its own gun, more like a big bazooka, the Super Scope. If you're familiar with the Zapper, this one's a totally different story. The Zapper used light detection. That is, when you pull the trigger, the screen goes black for a fraction of a second and the targets become white squares. The Zapper detects whether or not it's pointing at the light, hence the term light gun that everybody likes to call it. But the Super Scope uses a sensor that you plug into the Super Nintendo. Another thing about the Super Scope is that it isn't powered by the NES. It's wireless, which you think would be cool, but that means that you gotta use 6 AA batteries, and this beast drains them in a few hours. And why is the trigger on the top? It should be down here. This is You think the Super Scope would be more reliable than the original Zapper, but it's not. Now let's look at the Miracle Piano. It's a miracle if I could figure this. You might be thinking, wow, Nintendo had a piano? Well, yeah, Nintendo had everything. It's got one game, which is basically a piano teaching tool. It's actually not bad. Well, that's really all there is to say. Next we have the Power Pad. You lay it on the floor, kind of like Twister. Let's pop in good old world-class track meet and have a race, jump hurdles, and do the long jump or triple jump. The present-day equivalent of the Power Pad is Dance Dance Revolution, and there will also be a version on the Wii. It was meant to be a family game, but most kids I knew played it alone in their room, and that meant that if your room was upstairs, your parents would hear like all this thumping and shit. They hated it. Cats and dogs would and shit on it. In fact, just thinking about it makes me feel like having evacuation. Yeah, it all comes down to tapping buttons, which brings us to our next accessory. Probably the stupidest thing ever invented. The speed board. What is it? It's a piece of plastic. You attach your controller. You get it? In case you don't want to hold the controller with your hands, in case you enjoy playing on the floor or behind a table, then this is for you. It's embarrassing. What's the point? To put the speed at your fingers? Why in the would I need that? If I'm playing a game that involves having to tap the buttons like crazy, I'm probably going to get a turbo controller like the NES Max or NES Advantage. How could they even sell such a thing? Even though it's made by a third-party company, it was actually licensed by Nintendo. It's like covering a in ice cream sprinkles. Next up, oh boy, the Konami Laser Scope. Now I just want to go on record by saying I love Konami, but this thing reeks of. It's essentially yet another form of the Zapper, but it's voice controlled. To shoot, you say fire. Fire! 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 It also has headphones. It also advertises that parents will love what they don't hear. It says, while the laser scope surrounds the player with the sounds of exciting gameplay action, non-players can listen to music, read a book, talk on the phone, or have a conversation in the same room. Yeah, while you're saying, fire, 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 kind of defeats the purpose, right? Fire, 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 fire. I didn't say fire, I said fire. say anything. Wow, I just shot down a duck by saying. Next is the Rollin' Rocker. This thing is the biggest biscuit I've ever seen. You stand on it and supposedly you rock back and forth, which controls the D-pad. The modern day equivalent would be the Wii Fit. The Rollin' Rocker is supposed to be compatible with every game for the NES, but I find that it isn't compatible with any of them. It's another hunk of plastic! Who made this thing? Son of a... Well, we might as well try an LJN game. Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice! Let's see if this works. No, of course not.